Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing amazing today. In this video, we're diving into the latest updates about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. You don't want to miss this. So make sure to stay tuned till the end and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. For decades, Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos were the picture of a Hollywood love story that defied gravity. They were charming, playful, always finishing each other's sentences, always laughing a little too loudly at inside jokes no one else understood. They were the kind of couple that made people believe, really believe, that against all odds, some relationships truly lasted. But love, even the strongest kind, sometimes carries cracks invisible from the outside. And for Kelly, those cracks finally gave way. The news broke quietly at first. A small whisper on a late-night gossip page, a tweet from someone claiming exclusive insider info, a vague line referencing changes in their marriage. At dawn, it had grown into a wildfire. By noon, it was everywhere. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos split after 28 years. The earth didn't just shift beneath Kelly's feet. It collapsed entirely. Behind the scenes, before headlines and speculation erupted, Kelly had already spent nights trying to hold herself together. She had rehearsed silence, perfected smiles, and brushed away tears that kept returning as if determined to make their presence known. But none of it prepared her for the moment the world found out. When she walked into her dressing room that morning, the air felt thicker than usual. Her assistant, normally full of chatter, offered only a tight smile. Her phone buzzed with missed calls, emotional texts from friends, and notifications she couldn't bear to read. And then there was Mark, former husband, former partner in everything, the man whose presence had shaped the very architecture of her life, sitting in the far corner with tired eyes and a quiet apology trapped between them. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. Their silence said everything. Years of trying, months of drifting, days of grief. Kelly tried to push through her morning routine. She had always been a professional, trained to perform even when her personal world was falling apart. But standing under the bright studio lights that day, when she was about to greet millions of viewers with her usual warmth, her voice cracked before she could even say her first line. It was subtle enough that most people wouldn't have noticed. But her co-host noticed. The crew noticed, and Kelly noticed because inside her chest, the fault line widened just a little more. Later, after the show, she closed the door to her dressing room and sank into the couch where she had cried only hours earlier. But this time the tears were different, raw, uncontrollable, a grief that shook her entire body. She buried her face in her hands, letting out the kind of sob one cries only when losing something that can never be replaced. Years of memories flooded in, how they met in the dressing room of all my children, how their chemistry was instant and electric, how they eloped in Las Vegas days after falling in love, how they raised their 3 children with laughter, chaos, and unconditional devotion. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And real, she once believed, was unbreakable. But the truth of their split wasn't rooted in scandal or betrayal. It wasn't the dramatic story tabloids craved. It was quieter, more heartbreaking. Sometimes 2 people who have loved each other for half a lifetime grow in different directions. Sometimes the pace of the world, the demands of careers, and the pressure of being a public couple carve distance where closeness once lived. And sometimes love simply changes. It doesn't disappear, it changes. Mark had felt it too. The late-night conversations had grown shorter. The touches less frequent. The space between them, once warm, had slowly chilled. They tried counseling, vacations, time apart, time together, every possible attempt to reconnect the way they once had. But in the end, they both realized something devastating. They were holding on to the memory of who they used to be, not who they had become. When the official statement was released, crafted carefully, respectfully, lovingly, they both agreed it was the right decision. But knowing something is right doesn't make it hurt less. Kelly wiped her face with trembling hands. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, at the woman who had built a career on strength, wit, and resilience. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she didn't recognize herself. Her phone vibrated again. A message from one of her children. "We're with you, Mom. Don't worry. We'll get through this." Despite the pain, she smiled. If there was one constant in her life, one unbroken part of her heart, it was her kids. They were the reason she and Mark had fought so long to save what they had. They were the reason she still believed in family, even if that family now looked different than before. She texted back, her fingers still shaky. "I love you more than anything." The media frenzy exploded over the next few days. Talk shows analyzed their body language from old interviews. Gossip blogs dug through years of photos to find signs of the split. Fans mourned the end of an iconic love story. But Kelly stayed quiet, choosing not to fuel the fire. Mark did the same. Yet silence didn't shield her from the reality of waking up in an emptier home, or seeing Mark's clothes missing from the closet, or cooking dinner for one instead of two. She kept replaying old memories like scenes from a movie she once starred in but could no longer access. But heartbreak has a strange rhythm. It breaks you, yes, but it also rebuilds you. And slowly, so slowly she barely noticed it, Kelly began to breathe again. She started taking walks alone in the early morning, listening to the sound of her own footsteps, reminding herself she still existed outside the roles she had played: wife, mother, co-host, celebrity. She rediscovered journaling, pouring grief, confusion, and even small sparks of hope onto paper. She sat with friends who held space for her without asking intrusive questions. She learned to say, "I'm not okay," without feeling guilty. Mark, too, was healing in his own way. They spoke occasionally, not as husband and wife, but as two people who shared nearly 3 decades of life and still respected each other deeply. Their conversations were gentle, sometimes bittersweet, occasionally hopeful. Not about reconciliation, but about understanding. One evening, weeks after the news broke, Kelly went through an old photo album she hadn't opened in years. There they were, young, fearless, glowing with the kind of love that feels immortal. She traced her finger lightly over one picture of their wedding day, her smile radiant, Mark looking at her as if she were the only person in the universe. A tear slid down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from devastation. It was gratitude. Because even if their marriage had ended, the story they built together, the laughter, the trust, the adventures, the children, was a masterpiece. Not every masterpiece lasts forever, but that doesn't make it any less beautiful. Heartbreak had unfolded, yes, but so had growth. And in the quiet of her living room, surrounded by memories that once hurt and now simply existed, Kelly whispered to herself, "I'm going to be okay," and she meant it. The future was uncertain, and healing would take time. But Kelly Ripa, even through tears and broken pieces, was stepping into a new chapter. With strength she didn't know she had, with love that still lived in different forms, and with hope gently returning to her heart. Even on nights when sleep refused to come, when the ache of absence pressed down on her chest, Kelly would remind herself of the most important truth: life, like love, is unpredictable. And even in endings, there is a seed of new beginnings. Slowly, she began imagining life not as what had been lost, but as what could be discovered. A life full of possibility. A life where she could laugh again without guilt, where she could love without fear, and where she could embrace herself fully. Even the parts she had once hidden behind a mask of perfection. Because heartbreak may have unfolded, but so did Kelly, in all her unguarded, human, radiant, unstoppable glory. Stay tuned for all the updates about Kelly Ripa. We are the first to publish all the information about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. So stay with us to get all the latest updates. And stay tuned to our Kelly and Mark report for all updates.